Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we are back with another Saturday Sermon college football show. Nick Reichert, how you feeling today?
I don't even really know at this point. You said you had a special fit for the pod. I was here sitting here thinking you were gonna be suited up or something for the sermon.
No,
So yeah, I
honestly,
mean,
I'm
just for
I'm
the
wearing
loop.
the I'm wearing the wackiest outfit I could possibly think of to describe this past weekend of college football. This college football weekend was the wackiest weekend of college football. You had so many tight games that had no reasons being tight. I mean, I had to put on the Suns dog hat, had to stretch it out as far as I could, had to go find the old Letterman jacket, had to dust off the dust on this, and come out fresh to death in my wackiest fit. Those sunglasses were really bothering my eye. But Nick Reichert, I'm going to take this stuff off. But while I take this stuff off, let's go ahead and talk about what you did this past weekend, Nick.
Oh man, you know, watch football.
Watch football. Do anything else?
Same old, dude. No, I
Drank
watch
some whiskey,
football.
watch some football.
You know what? No, all right. So I did help my brother frame his basement. I mean, I didn't really help that much. I was there and I cut a couple of uh, two by fours, like maybe three, and then I watched football. I watched Penn State look like dog shit.
Agree.
Um, However, after watching the rest of this week, I don't feel nearly as bad as I did because there was
Shouldn't.
something in the air
I
on
agree.
college football Saturday week 2.
And we shot each other that text, and we both said at the same time, literally the exact same time, which you did post on the Saturday sermon story. There's something. What the fuck? There's something in the air. Like this weekend was literally. I don't know what was going on. I don't know if everyone just played down to competition or what the deal was. But man, my weekend, a lot of the same as it was last weekend. Man, had all the TVs going. Made some pork belly. Had a nice little barbecue day. Watched football. Had about 7, 8 games going on at once. I think at one point I texted you and told you I'm overstimulated by all the football on my TV screen, so I had to cut a couple TVs off. Ended up staying up super late with my wife, who actually made it through the entire Oregon Boise State game. Which round of applause for Melissa. You did a great job there. Normally she doesn't stay up that late, but I will say she watched the full game, and then I stayed up till 4 a.m. watching the new movie on Peacock, The Bike Rider. So that was my weekend. Had a blast, but let's dive in and recap some of these games. We're going to keep this week a little bit shorter. We went over 2 hours last week. That should be the longest episode that we ever have before we start splitting this up into 2 episodes. But as you mentioned, that Bowling Green at Penn State game, 34-27. It was a grind for Penn State to win it all, but I mean, it just goes to show you how wacky college football is. One of the things I will say that is a big takeaway from this game that I feel works in the favor of Penn State is the fact that Drew Aller the first week played lights out football. The second week he had to play from behind, and that shows a lot going in towards the end of the season. You had a quarterback that's faced adversity early enough and it found a way to battle his way out, as well as the running backs found their way to keep the team going, keep the offense driving. I think Penn State's going to be in all right shape going forward. They got the rust off pretty early in this game against Bowling Green, against a team that they were a 4 point favorite of, but or a 4 touchdown favorite over. But Nick, like I said, I'm not disappointed in how Penn State played. Disappointed how the defense played, but it was a wacky week of college football. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, and like we were just talking about, the beginning of this game had me sweating bullets. I'm like, this should not be happening. This cannot be happening. This that's the most that team has given up in a half of football, and man, it had to be. It's close to a decade. Of all my time watching, there's only been handful of blowout games, but none that I recall giving up 24 points in the first half. You know, this is a team that is built off of defense, and they didn't show up. They didn't look like they were awake. I mean, they were sloppy. They were missing tackles. Um, Now, granted, they did get, you know, they got it in gear the second half. They only gave up a field goal, and
Yep.
like you said, I mean, with the silver lining, that offense was still able to score
Yep.
whenever they wanted to. I drew through a bad pick. It was just an underthrown ball. But other than that, I mean, you had two 100 plus yard rushers in Singleton and Allen, and Tyler Warren had a career day with 100. like right under 150 receiving yards.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, that kid is, when it's all said and done, he's going to be one of the top prospect tight ends in the nation. He's
He
been
is.
a secret weapon. We've talked about it for years. I was like,
Yep.
this is a guy that is a he's a weapon that nobody talks about. Now, that being said, I'm not going to sit here and put too much stock into this week just because, and it doesn't make sense, but all I tell people is this is college football math. I
Yes,
told you
sir.
when we were talking about my upset picks,
Mm-hmm.
and you agreed. And what do we say? Syracuse looking to upset
Georgia Tech.
K-State. And yeah, K-State was looking like they could be upset, and Oklahoma State. We said it all before the games, and I said there's no rhyme or reason other than college football math.
100%. One thing though, you did mention tight end. I will give a kudos and a round of applause. Bowling Green's tight end is going to go in the top three picks or top three rounds in the draft.
Well,
Uh,
Connor Bazelak played lights out too, and that
yes,
was
I mean he did have
and
two interceptions, but they, I mean, still, I
they
mean
were
he played
late. They
really
were late
well.
in the game, dude.
Yep.
Their backs were against the wall.
Yep.
I I I'm not going to sit here and make it an excuse for Penn State. That defense is a lot better than what they played.
Agree.
That being said, Connor Bazelak played lights out. I mean, this was a kid that played in the SEC. He played in the Big Ten. Like this isn't a slouch of a player. Things just don't go your certain way, and you have your day. And I mean, he had it. But not only that, and this is if there's anything that I'm concerned about for this week, it was the lack of a pass rush.
Agree.
But that Bowling Green offensive line
Played really
played
well.
incredible.
And they typically play decent against Big Ten teams, which is awesome as well. But Nick,
Action, baby.
while we're transitioning over, with the sake of time in mind, we'll go to number 3, Texas at 10, Michigan. The Michigan train, in my opinion, is absolutely dead.
Derail.
I'm going to go ahead and put my head down and give it a quick moment of silence. Michigan got mollywopped, got stomped, got beat ridiculous 31-12, and I think that Texas was taking it easy on them. Texas could have scored way more than they did, and they didn't. I think that Edwards lost his ability to run the football. I mean, 8 carries for 41 yards last week. I mean, he only has, 70-something yards for the season, 80-something yards for the season rushing
Yeah,
total. He was supposed to be your guy. He was supposed to be who picked up
should cover athlete.
After Blake Corum left, and it's not the case. Quarterback play at Michigan was absolutely atrocious. I've heard more about Davis Warren's outside of the field story than I have his on the field story. I mean, he threw for 204 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Their offensive line, and an award-winning offensive line, has not showed up at all yet this season. Man, I have lost all faith in Michigan. I have lost all faith in them being in the playoffs this year. I've officially, this moment, written Michigan off of my list of playoff contenders, and honestly, wouldn't be surprised if they finish in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. Quinn Ewers, though, man, he played a hell of a game. That is, stop the arch push. I've said it a million times. Texas, I'm going to look at you one more time and tell you, never bring up Arch Manning again this season. It's done. Quinn is your guy. Quinn is going to win you the big one. Stop. Nick, what are your thoughts on Texas versus Michigan?
Lots to unpack here. Um, Starting off with the good, Texas is the real deal.
Texas is back.
They they bullied the bullies, and I've always said I'm not saying Texas is back until they actually are back. I'm buying stock. I'm buying stock heavy because these guys are a complete football program. I think they're right up there with Ohio State and Georgia right now. Tennessee's making a pretty good argument for themselves as well, but right now I think there's a clear separation in teams, and there's 3 teams at the top. Those are the ones. Now, to the negative, depending on how you feel. Michigan. I just said it. The bullies got bullied. I told you,
100%.
I
Yep.
said they need to stick to their roots and their identity, and they didn't do that. They didn't play Michigan football. They didn't play the way they play, and they were like timid. They came out and they got pummeled. I had a little more hope for them. I know their offense didn't do anything, but man, that defense gives up almost 30 in the first quarter or first half. This isn't the same Michigan.
No.
They completely threw out their identity, and I expected more out of them. I'm gonna be honest with you. I
Same.
expected Texas to win. I expected Texas to cover. I didn't think Texas was gonna cover by 20 plus points.
Insane to think about. And the great Brandon Walker said, when you lose 18 starters, when you lose a head coach, when you lose your entire coaching staff, when they all leave you, and you hire Sharon Moore as your head coach, who won games last year, but wasn't calling the
Listen,
shots.
and
We all
that's
knew
something that
that.
I wrote down too.
Won games, he
It's
wasn't calling the shots. When you hire him as your head coach, and he's not prepared to be a big time college football coach, this is the outcome of what happened. And Brandon Walker, I will give you your props on that. 100% spot on, 100% accurate. Man, Michigan's dead.
he got the wrong. He got the job for the wrong reasons.
Agree.
Everybody looked at it like, oh well, he beat the two big ones on the schedule. It doesn't really take much. Let's be honest here. I mean, what really changed from a week to week basis? He just filled in. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I mean, he's those two games weren't indicative of what's to come. And I think he has a lot of potential to be a great coach.
Agree.
They were obviously going to take a step back. I just think it was disappointing how they did.
And
I'm
also,
not going to sit here
he's
and
not ready for this job right now. He's not ready for this job right now at all.
well, the last thing I'll say, and this could be a controversial take. I think that this Texas team that just played last Saturday, had they played Michigan of last year in week two at in Ann Arbor, I think Texas is winning that football game.
With a healthy Quinn Ewers. Remember, he was dealing with
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
injuries last
No,
year.
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah,
the 2024
yeah.
Texas team that was on the field last Saturday. I think if they played the 2023 Michigan Wolverines in Ann Arbor, this is no bias. This is just because Michigan didn't really play well early on. If you recall, what
Yep.
did
Bowling.
so
I mean, the Bowling Green game, stuff like that. Yeah.
Bowling Green three picks. I think Texas of this year probably would have beat Michigan of last year in Ann Arbor if they played in week two.
Here's a hot take for you. I think Texas of this year, last year, would have been the national champions. All the way around. So next game we'll
Could
jump.
be.
Next game we'll jump into, and this one, Mystical Joe over here called this one happening. 21 Iowa versus Iowa State. Well, Iowa State beat Iowa 20-19. I called this game going in. I called it going the way it went. I said that Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins were both going to have great days. Honestly, to be fully transparent with you, Iowa, find an offense. Find an offense.
That's abysmal.
Did Cade even throw 100 yards this week? I think he only threw 99 yards this whole week.
They, I,
They did lean on Caleb
I,
Johnson a little bit more, though, their running back. I mean, he had 25 carries, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns with a 54-yard run, but you got to have play out of your quarterback. You cannot rely on your defense to bail you out of games against teams that have better offenses than you and have good defenses. You have to have some type of an offense attack, and God bless. Iowa, you're
you know
horrible.
what this, you
Shout
know
out
what
to
this
Coy.
game reminded me of was a couple years back when Penn State went to Iowa and lost. They went up 14-0 in the first quarter, and they were looking like they were about to cook, and they absolutely should have. Sean Clifford got hurt, and the backup quarterback was atrocious. And you saw that lead start to dwindle. It was chipping away, field goal, field goal. And all you could do is sit there and watch, and you know what's about to happen.
Yep,
And I felt the same way about Iowa. They had that 13-point lead. Their defense is doing everything they freaking can in their power,
yep.
and your
Well, Iowa,
offense
to cut
is.
in real quick, Iowa had the 13-point lead that should have been, what, a 17, 21-point lead at that
That's what
point?
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But they could not put the ball in the end zone, and
Yep.
we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is Iowa football. It's just like I couldn't imagine being an Iowa football fan. Sorry, Coy.
Sorry, Coy.
They could have a mediocre offense, and they would be a real threat.
I mean, firing Ferentz wasn't the answer, right? The OC Ferentz, not the
Yeah,
head
yeah, yeah.
coach. I mean, that wasn't the answer,
No, dude,
clearly.
I mean, this has been an Iowa thing
It's
for
a culture thing.
years.
It's a culture thing.
Yeah,
So,
it
yeah, I
goes
mean,
a lot longer than this.
that was a game, man. It was fun to watch in a sense that the comeback was incredible to watch for Iowa State. But man, people aren't. I mean, we said this in our unreleased podcast, our unreleased episode about the Big 10, our Big 12 preview. But Man, I mean, Rocco Beck, man. If I said if they had a quarterback at the beginning of the season, and of course this is
Go.
unreleased episode that we have banked up somewhere, but I even mentioned, if Iowa State can start off with an offense at the beginning of the season, they can start off hot with quarterback play. They're going to be a tough team to beat. They're going to be a thorn in a lot of teams' sides, and I mean, it just showed that last year.
Well, this win,
They didn't have a good offensive start last year. They played awesome
no.
defense at the beginning, but they didn't have a good offensive start. They found it towards the end of the season, and this year they're gonna be a force. Don't be surprised if you see them
I mean,
in the
I
running
think this
for the
game
championship
propelled
game.
them.
Agree.
This game propelled them tenfold.
Agree. And talking about a game that propelled people forward, man. Number 14 Tennessee at neutral site. Number 24 NC State. Of course, I have to have on some Tennessee gear right now. I have these beautiful Crocs on with a little Smokey on the side. You see Smokey there? It's not really there. It is. Tennessee ended up really beating the tar out of NC State. 51-10 win. ACC's down bad. Tennessee was probably the most complete team I watched this week, and I'm being 100% honest with you on that. There's a couple other teams that I can
Texas.
say. I was going to say Texas is the other one that I could say was really complete. But Tennessee, I mean, offense, defense, they all looked really good. Nico's stat line wasn't anything outlandish, but Nico played really good football this week. He had that garbage interception when they were trying to be too aggressive and trying to really run up the score. But as I mentioned last week, the two guys to watch out for on the ground is going to be Dylan Sampson and Nico. They both ran the ball really well this week, but Sampson had another killer game. 20 rushes, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I did say Squirrel White was going to be the player to watch out for. Didn't make much noise, week one. This week he had 2 catches, 67 yards, but he had a clutch 45-yard reception that really set him up for a touchdown. Their defensive unit is so scary, Nick. I'm afraid to – I mean, James Pierce Jr. didn't make a lot of noise, but their defense had 3 sacks, 13
He didn't have
tackles.
to.
Had 3 sacks, 13 tackles for losses, 1 interception with an 85-yard touchdown from a guy that was – he's still a walk-on. Like what? Like their team was complete. NC State did not look like a top 25 team, and Grayson McCall is not the answer. Agree?
Yeah, this is it's early. It's still early to really
Agree.
start to see much from most teams. But this is 2 weeks where they've looked horrendous. They
Horrendous.
had a tight game to FCS West Carolina. 38 to 21 was the final, and they pulled away. They weren't dominating that game. I gave them the benefit of the doubt because I saw Iowa do this or Oregon do the same thing. I just thought it was one of those weird week one things, but a weird week one turns into a weird week two. Things don't add up when there's smoke to the fire. I think NC State is in trouble, and they're not who we thought they were.
I
That being
agree.
said, that being said, I think it still tells you that Tennessee is really about that life because I don't care if you're playing the worst team in Power Four. If you dominate another team like that, or another team at the same level, you're a good football program.
Agree.
You're a really good football program. The top programs put up 51 against those teams.
Agree. And I just think Heupel. I think this is the year for Heupel. I really do. I think the Oklahoma game is going to be a big test for him here in the next couple weeks. But I think
I think they're
Heupel.
going to beat the
I
shit out
and that
of
was a very
Oklahoma.
disappointing team this week. I mean, Oklahoma, Houston. That was what I mean. Literally, what a weird week. But as we digress, the next game we're going to talk about today is another weird one. And I want to formally apologize to you, Boise State Broncos. I did say Ashton was going to go off. I did say that. 100% did say that. But I thought Oregon was going to show that they're Oregon. They're not Oregon anymore. I don't know who this team we watched on Saturday was. I don't know who this team we watched the week before was. All of that Oregon hype, I think, is out the window as well. I think they're not. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I really don't. The way they're playing, I don't see them making the playoffs. I see them losing soon, if not this weekend. Ashton, I mean, he's a man among boys out there. If he continues on the track that he is on, which it should actually not be too hard for him to do this season, barring injury and stuff, he will be your Heisman winner. I don't care if it's
He
a
almost has
quarterback.
10 touchdowns, and it's week two.
Yes, I don't care if it's a quarterback award. You have to honor the best player in college football with that award, and I think he's going to be that guy. I mean, he was 25 carries, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns, a 70-yard gash during clutch time
That's
as well. I mean,
That's against a football team that's supposed to be a national title contender.
they were your number 7 team going into this week, and Boise was unranked, and you watched the way that they played. Boise State is showing that they are a force to be reckoned with in the G5. But with that being said, I mean, man, they're running behind one guy, and this guy is incredible. Oregon played like complete garbage, awful dog crap. Jordan James had a decent
They
game. I mean,
scored, didn't they score two touchdowns on special teams?
I believe so, yes. And I mean,
Which, don't
Jordan,
get me wrong, I mean that's part of the game, but
but I
you
mean, Jordan,
cannot rely on scoring special teams touchdowns.
Jordan James, I don't believe got in the end zone. I mean, I think he had 17 carries, 102 yards. You can't rely on a running back to run that much and not score. And I just want to know. I have one question to ask before we move on. Why is Oregon struggling this bad?
Listen, man, I told you I'm not very high on them coming into the season. I just think the hype is just it's too much. I don't even I question how tough this team was going to be from like a toughness standpoint. I don't know. Your guys is as good as mine. I don't have words for it. But dare I say it, they may not be the best team from to come over from the Pac-12 this season into the Big Ten.
Who are you thinking is?
Lincoln squad.
And that is where we are moving on to now. Colorado at Nebraska. 28-10, which was, in my opinion, a lot like the Texas-Michigan game in the sense that I think Nebraska could have ran the score up and they didn't. I think Matt Rule is that type of a guy that he refuses to do that type of stuff to prove a point. With that being said, I mean, weren't Matt Rule and Dion hired in the same season?
So, this is to me a tale of two polar opposites.
But I'm asking, they were hired in the same season, correct?
Yeah,
They were both
I
hired in the same
yeah,
offseason,
they sure were.
and who made more noise? Everyone cared more about Colorado and the prime hire. And everybody talked about Colorado this, Colorado that, while Matt Rule just kind of did what he did with the guys that he had, didn't really do anything.
Matt
Matt
Rule built a
Coulter.
culture.
He did. He did.
Matt
And
Culture, I
that's
mean, let's be real.
Matt Coulter.
Matt Culture. Now look, you have Dion who they tried a quick fix. You
Hmm.
can't you can't just slap duct tape on something and expect things to be sustainable. He has a
You can't park a Lamborghini in a carport of a trailer.
yeah, yeah. He took this Colorado program, completely overhauled the roster twice. Twice. Did a whole lot of this and did not build anything. What happened initially is you have a couple shiny new toys that excel against not great programs. They get a quick instant gratification, and then it goes downhill.
Quick.
And then clearly nothing happened differently than the offseason. That offensive line may be worse than they were last year. I think statistically, it's either them or the defense. Either way, you go on the other side, you have Matt Rule. This is a slow build. You can never just you can't expect instant gratification, and they bought into Matt Rule and just let him do his thing. I mean, the guy can talk, and you just listen.
Yep. We said on the first episode he'd get us to run through a wall if he asked us to. He'd get me to slap my mom if he asked me to. Like anything
Pretty sure I said something like that. Yeah,
Matt Rule would literally, I mean, he would literally convince me to, be the best version of myself every single day if I just had an alarm clock with Matt Rule just talking to me. But with the game in mind, I want to mention a couple things here, and this is tough to say. After this week, the lack of the accountability by the Sanders family as a whole, the lack of maturity. I can no longer cheer for Colorado. I can never have a soft spot in my heart for Colorado. The hype behind the team is gone. The hype behind Dion as a coach is gone. Casuals are starting to exit the bandwagon left and right. And I don't think Deion's going to be coaching after this season. I think as soon as his son goes to the NFL, he's either going back to Barstool, but I mean, even Barstool's ripping him so bad, so I don't think he wants to go back to Barstool. Or he's going to find some job as an analyst or something somewhere. I don't think Deion's going to be a head coach after this season. I think that losing Hunter and losing Shador this season, it's going to be the end of it. I really do. I see it being the end of it. I could see him maybe going back and coaching high school, but I don't see him coaching college anymore. I don't see him coaching at Colorado at all. What I will say, though, is that out of all, the negatives that we saw in Colorado, I mean, that interception to Tommy Hill, that dumb play that Shador threw where it was 7 yards out of the end zone or something, and it was returned back by Tommy Hill for a touchdown.
He wasn't pressured on that one.
And he wasn't pressured. He just threw a stupid pass.
All I'm going to say.
I think after this week and all the negatives and everything about Colorado, one thing we can all agree on is that Travis Hunter is still a dog. Travis Hunter is the best player besides Ashton Jeanty at Boise State. He is the best football player in college football overall. He is the only thing that's giving that team blood. He's the only team that's giving that, or he's the only person that's giving that team some type of a life. Travis Hunter doesn't quit. Travis Hunter did deal with a little bit of an injury, towards the middle end of the game, but Travis Hunter didn't quit. Travis Hunter is the best player on the field. Any game.
Shador Sanders left with 2 minutes left in the football game.
Ran out, and then his post-game press conference wasn't that bad, but at the same time, you don't let your starting quarterback go out and trash the line like that.
Or walk out with 2 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, agree. And that's what I mean by the accountability by the Sanders family. You got to take your losses like a man. Now, Shiloh did break his forearm, so Shiloh had to leave. I get that. Shiloh watched the rest of the game from the hospital room. I get that. But Shador, you never leave on your team. You, as a quarterback, you are always the first one on the field, the last one off the field, and you didn't do that. You gave up on your team.
There's this level of nepotism, and I think anybody can resonate with disagreeing and not having respect for these actions. Deion is an excellent father. Does everything. So much as he took over a program for his son. Great father, not a good coach. And I think if he were to leave after the season, he would have left Colorado in a worse place than what they were before he ever showed up.
Because that transfer portal will be hot as soon as he's gone. And those guys will all disappear. Well, last thing I want to leave with is this on this game.
Well, I'm going to say this. Okay, same thing. I'm going to give some kudos to Nebraska.
Yeah, me too.
There's a lot of, bashing, rightfully so, Colorado and Deion, but man, Dylan Raiola can play ball. This
Agree.
was not a team that was going to come out and beat them, but it was still a primetime football game, and that kid plays like he's been playing college football for 3 years.
And he thinks he's Patrick Mahomes. He thinks he's Patrick Mahomes, even to the walkout onto the field.
Ice in his veins.
Did you see that? Did you see when he jumped in the air and did the whole Patrick?
Yeah.
Come on, man. And he tried to justify it all after. He's like, I've worn my hair like this since I was 7 years old or something. I've been 15 since I started playing sports.
Well, did you hear
Mahomes?
On, they asked Mahomes about, the imitation part. And I loved what he said. He's like, it just tells me I'm getting old.
Yep.
I used to look up to players, he said, I used to look up to A-Rod as a kid, wanted to play just like him.
Yep.
And, so I thought that was a pretty cool response on his end.
Agree. And I don't like Mahomes at all, but I agree. I think he's very humble. I think he's appreciating the admiration that this young phenom has for him.
But then the team as a whole, man, they bullied. They played Nebraska football. We said it last week about Miami looking like the U. This Nebraska program looks tough, and man, I'm happy for that fan base. That fan base is freaking electric. They've sold out a couple hundred games in a row.
Yep.
At that stadium, and they've not been good. They haven't made a bowl game in 10 years.
And they deserve this now. They deserve this.
102%. I want to get to a game up there.
Shout out to that. I do too. I've been to the stadium. I've toured the stadium. I've been in the stadium. I've done everything there. I've not been to a game. I would love to go to a game at Nebraska. So that's something maybe we could potentially talk about doing this season. But shout out to Will Compton. I think his hype videos are doing something for the team.
That was dope.
The week one was incredible. This past week one is incredible. I mean, the fact that they're embracing their alums is so great now, especially one that's so active out in the space of football and social media and all that stuff as Will Compton. I think Matt Rule and him have created some really great chemistry and have a really good bond because of busting with the boys and the amount of stuff that they've done for Nebraska football through their spring tours and all that stuff. I think it's pretty cool. But the last thing I want to talk about and the takeaway of this whole entire game, Nick, the biggest game this year in the Big Ten is going to be 7-0 Nebraska versus Ohio State. I'm calling
The
it
biggest
right now.
first game.
The biggest.
The biggest first game.
I think this is the biggest game in general for the Big Ten. I really do believe that. I think that I really do think that the hype behind this game is going to be, as you said a few weeks
Well, it's
ago.
a new it's a new it's a new football
It's a
program.
new football program. It's a new football or it's a new competition
That's
that you
what I'm
haven't seen
saying.
in several years. But it's an ultimate helmet game. Agree?
Oh yeah, yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
I just think the hype behind it's going to be big. I don't think Michigan versus Ohio State is going to be as big as it has been in the past. Penn State, Ohio State, I mean, that could be a decent one, and that could be a good one depending on how Penn State continues through the season. But I think Nebraska has a
Well, it's exciting.
really
It's
easy schedule
very
coming up, and it's going to be exciting.
exciting.
Everyone's going to talk about it. It's two historically great programs going head to head. As much as we hate Ryan Day here, that's going to be a game that I'm going to be circling on the calendar because I really do believe Nebraska is going to be 7-0 leading into that game.
That being said, I hate to burst the bubble, but Ohio State will probably win and cover. But anyways, let's move forward.
Last game we're going to talk about that's a recap is going to be the biggest upset of the week. Northern Illinois University at NIU, Northern Illinois University at number 5 Notre Dame. The
The
final score
Huskies.
16-14 Northern Illinois. Notre Dame was like a 4 or 5 touchdown favorite. To be a good football team, you don't blow
28-point favorite
you don't blow that. You don't.
at
You
home.
win that game at home. I think USC is going to beat Notre Dame, but I think the highlight of the entire game, I don't care about the score. I don't care about the outcome other than NIU winning. I think the highlight of the game was probably the most beautiful thing I have ever seen as a college football fan, and that was Thomas Hammock crying on the 50-yard line after the game. That
Skills,
man,
bro.
that
Skills.
man worked his tail off to get to a game where he was a 4 touchdown underdog in to win on the road against a historical team
And
like
his alma mater.
like Notre Dame, his alma, and to win that game, you gotta feel for that guy. I was in the garage crying.
Dude, I got
I'm not
chills
gonna
right now
lie.
thinking about it. Yeah,
Yes,
no, I got chills right now thinking about it. That was this is why I love this game.
it
You know what I
God,
mean?
it was so beautiful. It really was, and to see the joy and to see his players so happy for him
Dude,
as well as themselves, but they were more happy for him than they were themselves. That is a testament of a guy that they have there at Northern Illinois. That is a testament to a program that they're working on building over there. Now, I don't know if they're going to
action,
win the,
baby.
I don't know if they're going to win the MAC or not. Well, that's still to be determined. But man, you got to give it to that guy. You got to give him a quick round of applause because you deserve that, young man. You deserve that. Even though you're like 50 years old, you deserve that, and you also deserve that $1.4 million that's coming to your institution for beating Notre Dame on the
Insult
road.
to injury.
Love it. Last thing for that
So,
game that I'm going to bring up though is I think that the Riley Leonard magic is gone, and I believe he would have been a better fit at Texas A&M.
was it was it ever was it ever there?
Last season, he looked incredible last season until the injury.
So I'm gonna write off a couple numbers just to reiterate what we were discussing earlier. Penn State beats Bowling Green by 7. They were 31-point favorites. Oklahoma State went into double overtime at home against Arkansas and barely squeaked by. K-State won essentially at the end of the game at Tulane. Georgia Tech lost to Cuse. I don't necessarily know if that's an upset, but by Vegas standards, that's an upset. Same one with Iowa State over Iowa at Kinnick Stadium. Bama was up 1 point in the fourth quarter to University of South Florida. U of I beat ranked 17th Kansas or 19th. Yeah, 17th Kansas. Oklahoma wins by
They were
4.
19th, right?
19, yeah, 17 or
19th.
19, yeah. Oklahoma wins by 4 against Houston. Arizona wins 22-10 over North Arizona, FCS North Arizona. Auburn lost to Cal. And then you get this one. This week was nuts.
And that's why I
Now,
showed up dressed all wacky, man. It was a wacky week of college football.
now that being said, I was thrilled to see the Notre Dame train derailed. The simple fact that they went in and played a Texas A&M team that, looking at it right now, has major issues. They win that game and they go to ranked 5. You would have swore that they beat one of the top dogs in the Big Ten or the SEC. And the AP does this every single year. Notre Dame is the Dallas Cowboys of the NCAA. And man, I was let's just put that shit to rest. Let them go play for like the
Independent
backslide bowl.
championship of the world. Yeah,
I
I
don't think
agree.
they can, in my opinion, they can win out. And unless they're beating everybody by 35 points, they have no place in the playoff.
If both them and Northern Illinois win out this season, you got to bounce Notre Dame from the playoffs. You got to. So, well, I agree. I think that this is a wacky week. I think seeing Notre Dame lose is always great. My dad called me from the rehab center and was like, "I just love seeing Notre Dame lose. This is the best thing ever." And I didn't have the game on at the time. It was, second quarter, and he's like, "Man, you gotta." I've never had my dad call me and say, "Hey, you have to turn on this game." It's usually the other way around because I had so many other games going on, and that was right when I started to cut the TVs off because there was too much going on. I was overstimulated, and I turned that game on, and my dad and I just chatted for a quarter and just talked about how great it was to see Notre Dame in such trouble. But man, fun sight to see, awesome sight to see. Some great players coming into this week. My players of the week in this exact order: number 3, Quinn Ewers, 24 for 36, 246 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Kid's a straight baller. Stop the arch train right now. It can wait one more season. Number two
So wait,
player.
wait, wait,
So that's my
wait,
number
wait.
3.
Just because we're kind of on the same path here, I second that as my first player of the week.
So that's your
The number
number.
three.
That's your number 3 spot. So
Yep.
my number 2 spot, and we didn't talk about this beforehand. Ashton Gidi, 25 carries,
Same, same.
192 yards, 3
Same.
touchdowns, and a close loss versus Oregon. And Nick
Now
on the
wait.
Nick on the count of
I
3.
you
On the count of
I
3,
was just gonna tell you the same thing.
we're gonna say our player of the week. As much as it hurts to say, one.
I'm not hurt by it. He
All
didn't
right,
play for who he used to play
all
for.
righty. So we are on the same path. 1, 2, 3. Kyle McCord.
Kyle McCord.
Agree. Kyle McCord, 32 for 46, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns. Did you see the head coach complimenting Ohio State for letting him walk? That is incredible.
Dude,
Why would you? I mean, Kyle McCord, he was not a good fit in the Ohio State system. I agree. I think Syracuse is the perfect fit for him. I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with this year, and he might be one of those unspoken guys to have a award-winning season. Now, maybe not a
well,
Heisman.
he's third in passing
Yep.
yards in the country right now.
Yep.
And unlike some of these other guys, it's not like he's just played two high school football teams. I
Agree.
mean, Georgia Tech is a respectable program and he torched them.
He did.
He, I think he leads the country in touchdown passes right now.
I believe he does as well.
I mean,
Phenomenal.
and he has a different swagger about him too. And look, I flamed him all last year with those little TikTok dances that Ohio State was doing. But you know what? Like, he's got a different swagger about him. You saw him out there, like you saw him on the sideline talking that shit. And I salute you, Kyle, because I think the pressure of being in his position last year was just immense.
I I
You know what I
disagree.
mean?
I disagree. What I think it was
That'd be a hard fan base to play for.
I agree with that, but I don't think that was his issue last year. I think his issue is he wanted to be the guy, and he was just one of many guys last year. And I think allowing him to come out in his own, to be that leader, to be that guy of a program, to be that face of a program, I think is something he wanted and something he's relishing with. I mean, last year he got
I
lost
just
in the
don't think he
wash.
could. Well, I don't think he could win that locker room over either last year.
No, and
And
that's exactly it. I mean, you're
I
always
think
going to
he was
be.
trying. I'm telling you, I think he was trying to not mess up more than he was trying to just go out and play ball. He's
I can see that
over
point.
there at Syracuse. and I think the kid's having fun playing football, and you love to see it. I mean, he's
I
not a
do.
Buckeye anymore, so go
You,
Kyle.
you see Buckeye still trying to claim him and Quinn Ewers?
Dude, I hate that university.
I had a friend of mine post on a post this weekend, and I said Quinn Ewers was a quarterback at Ohio State as long as I was in the shower this morning. And he said, "Well, once Ohio State Buckeye, always Ohio State Buckeye. Love to see
No,
him
you
beat
know what?
Michigan." No,
You know
no,
what he
no.
did? You
You
know what
ran
he
him out of
did?
town. You ran him out of town.
No. Quinn, which is more hilarious, Quinn went to Ohio State, got paid a freaking bag of NIL, and ran off on the plug. And you know what? I love to see it. I love to see it.
Well, didn't they bring in Justin Fields when they had Quinn Ewers there, and that was the big thing too. Is Quinn was supposed to be the guy, and Justin Fields transferred him from Georgia, right?
I don't think they're on the same.
I thought they were on the same team. I thought
He wasn't. He wasn't. No, I don't think so because not Justin Fields, but C.J. Stroud was
C.J.
above
Stroud,
him.
C.J. Stroud, C.J. Stroud. Why did
Yeah,
I get those two confused? That's the dumbest thing ever. C.J. Stroud and Quinn Ewers was on the same team. They brought Quinn in, they brought C.J. in, and Quinn ended up leaving, getting the bag and leaving. Right?
yeah.
My apologies. Sorry, Justin. Sorry, C.J. Got you guys mixed up. I apologize. Both great quarterbacks at Ohio State. One's a great NFL quarterback. The other one not so much. But going into hot topics of the week and stuff, Nick, you have a few for me you wanted to bring up.
Oh, just a couple little interesting things. Not really hot topics, just things in the college football world that I wanted to talk about. First one, Peyton Thorne is getting Venmo requests to pay everybody back that lost money for.
Is this 2 weeks in a row where we have requests for money from
You know
somebody
what?
blowing a game?
You know what? He answered back the best way you possibly could in media. He said, "It's funny that they request when there's a loss, but not a single one of them has ever paid me any part of their earnings when they won." I was like, that's a great response. Granted, I don't know how much money Peyton Thorne has really won people, but that's neither here nor there.
Agree. That's funny. That is hilarious. What's his Venmo? Is that public information? Can I get that?
Apparently, it's public information if he's getting Venmo requests. Um,
You know he's shut it down. He's had to
I
have
don't.
shut it down. He's probably got Cash App now or something.
Well, so they'll find it. They'll find it. But next, next one. Back to the Saturday sermons. Favorite favorite coach, Matt Rule. If it and he was quoted saying about night games that he dislikes them, and I quote, "If it was up to me, we'd play at 9 o'clock in the morning. Kegs and eggs and football. Let's go."
That is the ultimate football guy comment right there.
As if you needed another reason to relate to this guy and love this dude, he drops this banger of a line right to the media. God, I freaking love that guy.
I'll tell you what, kegs and eggs sound really fire. You know, Matt, when you guys have your off week this year, your bye week this year, you can come to Jacksonville, Illinois, where I live at, and I will have a keg and eggs ready for you. You and your whole team. I promise. Deal?
Last thing, real quick. I hate to beat a dead horse or a dead buffalo, but it was reported that Dion requests that the band does not play the fight song when Shador throws a touchdown pass so they can play his hit song, Perfect Timing.
Do you know who else played his hit song? Nebraska in the locker room after the win. That's embarrassing. You
It'd be one thing if that song was a banger, but good God. And
you played
I tried to listen to it all through, like on Sunday. It's like, no, I can't do this shit, man.
well. Two
I
things. Two things on that. it makes you realize that maybe that story of Colorado forcing their team to do team bonding at Shador's concert, it makes you realize that that was probably true. And number two, it makes you realize that there are a bunch of individuals playing for the name on the back of their shirt and not the name on the front. You
The
play
name is literally on the back of the shirt per that what they do with that handle on it.
yep,
And I say this a lot. You've known me for a long time. I've said it. If there's smoke, there's fire.
and there's a full forest fire going on right
There
now in
is,
Colorado. There is a or a full volcano erupting in
yeah,
Boulder.
there's a lot of smoke in Boulder.
I
And it
agree.
ain't no volcano.
I agree. It's crazy. So we'll kind of move on now, Nick. We're going to transition to the top games of this week that we kind of picked. We shortened this list up a little bit because we wanted to keep this relevant time wise. We wanted to keep it easy to listen to. We wanted to try to stay under an hour as much as possible. So top games this week: number 20 Arizona at number 13 Kansas State. K State is currently a 7-point favorite. Both teams are coming off of gritty wins, very gritty wins, with Arizona coming off a tough win against Northern Arizona 22-10, Kansas State coming off of a tough win 34-27 versus Tulane. Nick, what are your thoughts on this game? Who do you have winning this game?
This is on paper the best game of the week, that's for sure. And this is a Friday night game.
The best and most meaningful game of the week.
Yes, let's put it that way. The best and most meaningful. But at initial glance, this is the one that stands out. Okay. This is technically not a conference football game because this is one of those weird ones that was scheduled prior to
The
or
merger.
however that works. Yeah. But
Well, not merger,
man,
the realignment, excuse
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, a couple things about this one. I can see this thing going both ways. I in Zona's favor, they got some weapons, clearly. And the biggest, most glaring weakness up to this point for K-State has been that secondary.
Mm-hmm.
If Tedero McMillan can do Tedero McMillan things, you're you're gonna have trouble. You're gonna give up a lot of points. And I mean, no Fafita does his thing. It can get a little dicey for K-State. Now, that being said, on the other hand, Zone has been very underwhelming. I mean, they've played far inferior competition. You put up 70 points in your first week, but give up, what was it, 40 or whatever?
It was like
Something's,
38 or something like that, but yeah, whatever it
yeah.
was.
But then you play your next game against an FCS opponent with Tedero McMillan, with Noah Fafita, and you score 22 points. What is this team? This at this early of the year, playing a game that means this much, that's very, very alarming. Now, another interesting point, which I think this could go for both teams, are any of these programs saving some of what they got in the playbook? Now, I say that because Avery Johnson last game, he did not roll out of the pocket. And what does that kid do? He runs the football.
Yep,
He runs the football.
I agree.
So it's almost like I don't know if it was like a trying to fit a square peg in a round hole or whatever it may be, or if they're just trying to test see what he can do through the air. But we know how that kid plays football. I mean, he is a threat on his feet. I venture to say that you're going to see a lot more of him rolling out, a lot more of him using his feet because now these games are very much significant. And with this Arizona defense, I know K-State didn't play great last week, but I mean, again, it was a weird week, and Tulane's not a bad program, all things considered. Tulane
With Willie Fritz, they
would,
win that game.
well, yeah, they should have won I mean, they still should have won the game. There's some questionable calls that game that got a lot of people talking. All I would say about this one, I don't know who I'm picking. I think it's a coin flip. I'm leaning towards K-State, but what I will for sure say is take the freaking over right now before it gets too high.
I agree. I agree. My takeaway from this game is it's going to be a lot like how we expected LSU and USC to be. It's going to be the battle of whose defense is the best. And my opinion, I mean, the match predictor has it 72.8% in the favor of K State. That's based off of analytics. That's based off of all that stuff. I don't see it being a K State game. I actually see Arizona winning. I think Arizona's going to come out. They're going to play old Pac-12 football, so last year's Pac-12 football. They're going to come out. I think they're going to air the ball. I think Fafita and McMillan are both going to have an incredible day. I'm not sold on Avery Johnson. I've told you that since this before the season even started. I just don't feel comfortable with him going in and being able to outperform Fafita and McMillan. I see that
It is at
whoever.
K-State on Friday though, so
Yep,
that's
agree.
something to think about.
But I will say it's going to be the battle of whose defense is going to play the best and who's going to finally just not give up a touchdown. And I really do see this, as you said, being a super high scoring game. I'm really anxious to see how many yards McMillan has. I would be willing to bet close to 200. Close to 200.
Oh yeah, I mean
And that's not
he's our guy.
and that's not far out of line, is it? With how bad
No,
K State
no,
secondary
that's
is, it's not
insane.
far out of line.
That's insane to just throw a number like he probably goes for 200. That's a career game and then some for most
But
guys.
it's just
But
a
that's how
regular
good this kid
Saturday.
is.
It's just a regular Saturday for McMillan.
Either way, whatever happens, this is going to be a freaking awesome game, and I'm excited to see the Fafita versus Avery Johnson matchup. I think these are two young players that got a lot of talent, and they're exciting. They play an exciting style of football. So this is gonna be a shootout, and be ready for it.
I agree. Speaking of the game that we're really anxious to watch, at least I am, number 4 Bama at Wisconsin. Alabama's a 16.5 point favorite. Bama's coming off of a very, very poor first half against USF last week. They found a way to pull it off in the second half to win the game 42-16. But, man, Bama is.
The score is not indicative of that football
No,
game.
and Bama played the same way as Nick mentioned last week against USF. As you mentioned, I believe this is the game that Jalen Milroe got pulled and they put in random as quarterback. I don't even remember who the quarterback
Yeah,
was they put in for a couple weeks. But I don't know, man. I think that Bama's going to come out firing. I think Wisconsin is coming off of 2 very close games against much lesser opponents, South Dakota and Western Michigan. And when you talk about Tyler Van Dyke versus Jalen Milroe, yes, their stats might be the same when it comes to passing yards, but Van Dyke hasn't really scored through the air. Milroe has. I think it's going to come down to Michigan, or it's going to come down to Alabama really bullying Wisconsin. I think this game's going to get out of line really quick.
this is one of my locks of the week. Bama to cover. I haven't seen enough from Wisconsin to feel like they could even keep this game respectable.
Well, I mean, you didn't watch the Western Michigan game at all? That was during the same time I believe the Minnesota NC State game was on, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. It could have been the Friday game, and Minnesota
It
NC
just
State could have
wasn't
been
a
the
good.
Thursday
It
game.
was not a good football
It was
game.
too. It was tight. I mean, there was a point where Western Michigan was winning.
I I do think this is a helmet game. I'm excited for that. I mean, this is a classic, you know, classic matchup. So it's always cool. I mean, it's always cool to see
Yeah,
these bigger name programs or blue bloods or just like last week when you had Texas and Michigan. Um, as a Big Ten guy, obviously it's nice to see the Big Ten compete or beat the SEC, but I mean, this isn't the matchup to do it.
yeah,
I think, however, that this could be. I think this game is very, very important for Tyler Van Dyke to
yeah.
for his future. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
the kid's showing flashes, right? And he looked like he was going to be the next Heisman winner. His Heisman odds coming off of that really good, what was it, twenty
Yeah, it was
twenty
two.
two
It was two
season?
seasons ago. Yep.
Coming off that season, his Heisman odds were like fifth best or something, fourth best. They were really high. Um, I think that there may be some opportunity for some big plays against that, that Bama secondary. They've just had, it's not that they're not incredibly talented. There's just been a little bit of miscommunication,
Yeah.
things not working right. And I think that if I'm Tyler Van Dyke, I'm looking at this game like this is my livelihood. So I could see that's the
Yeah.
only way I could see it, anything ever happen, but I don't think that's enough to win this football game. I'm not sure it's enough to cover.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking Alabama. I'm taking them to cover as well. I think the spread is way too low in Alabama or towards Alabama side. I think it should be a little bit higher than that, but I see them covering. I see them covering by at least three,
16 and a half,
16 and a
16 and a
half.
half.
Yeah, that's wild. I see them covering by at least three touchdowns this game,
It's gonna
especially
be a 24-point game.
at least. I mean, 21 to 24. I agree. Next game we'll talk about, and it's probably the most intrigued I've been at any of the matchups this week. Now I'm super excited for the first game that we talked about in Arizona and Kansas State, but I'm actually really intrigued about the number 9 Oregon Ducks going in and playing Oregon State at Beavers or the Oregon State Beavers at their home stadium. Man, the line is 16 points in Oregon's favor, but Oregon's looked pretty god awful on
What have they done?
defense.
What have they done to deserve a 16 and a half points
Man, I don't know.
on
And,
the
and
road?
I mean,
On the road.
Oregon's coming off of a game where they barely beat Boise State. A game that they were favored to win by a lot, and they didn't. I mean, their run defense has been bad. Their defense as a whole has let up a lot of touchdowns to probably lesser opponents. I see Jam Griffin from Oregon State having a field day this week. I see them letting up a lot of yards on the ground when the Oregon State plays Oregon. I really do see that. I mean, he's had 38 carries this season, 249 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Don't be surprised if he has a big game this week against Oregon. I think that Oregon's going to win. I think they can pull this off. I think it's going to be a gritty game. But don't be surprised. Do not be surprised if the Beavers find a way to win this game, and this is your NIU Notre Dame of the week.
I'll tell you this. This game means a lot more to Oregon State than it does Oregon. This game is a lot more personal for Oregon State than it is Oregon. I think that goes a long way in college football. Granted, I don't think they're close to the same team as Oregon is. But man, this is college football and it's college football math. These guys are going to come out aggressive and chippy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, these Pac-12 teams dipping to the Big Ten and then the Big 12, that they ruined a lot for Oregon State.
Yeah.
They turned them into a Mountain West program when they had no desire to be a Mountain West program.
Nope. They had to sign that 1-year partnership just so they had enough games on their schedule to qualify for an at-large bid.
I'm excited to see them come out. I hope they come out really physical because that'll make for a fun game. I don't know if I'm comfortable giving Oregon the points on a betting spread.
Never.
They've not done the single thing for
Nope.
me to trust them, so I'm gonna stay away from that one.
Yeah, if I would bet that game, I would bet Oregon money line just to be safe. But I mean, don't be surprised if Oregon
That's
State.
not even safe.
Don't be
That's not even
surprised
safe
if
at this.
well, don't be surprised if Oregon State pulls this off. And I think Nick and I both agree. We think Oregon's going to win, but don't be surprised if Oregon State pulls it off. Well, since we're on the same tune of upsets, Nick, upsets of the week. I will go with mine first. I know you have a couple lined up. I only have one lined up, and this is actually one that I am going to go ahead
Well,
and
you know
take.
what? We have the same one, so
But I'm going to go ahead and
I'll
take.
give
I'm
you.
going to go ahead and take this first, real quick. Okay, we're going to go to DraftKings, or excuse me, FanDuel, and I'm going right now, and I'm going money line. Money line plus 210. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to go ahead and empty out my account on this game. Not my checking account, but my FanDuel account. So now we officially have placed a bet. All right, so bet's in. Nick, let's go ahead and both talk about this. I am going to say my upset of the week is going to come in the form of an SEC matchup. South Carolina versus LSU. I think that LSU being a 7-point favorite, I think that line should be a little bit closer. Maybe 3.5, maybe 3. The matchup predictor has the game almost dead even, Nick. ESPN matchup predictor does a really good job with predicting outcomes of games. It actually is only in a 1.5% favorite in LSU's favorite. But South Carolina looked so electric last week. I'm taking this as upset of the week. I think that LSU's defense is improved, but they're not that good. And the locker room is not going to fight in tight games for Brian Kelly. I'm calling it right now, a lock of the week, upset of the week. Anything you can think of the week, South Carolina over LSU. If I'm wrong, Nick, I'll Venmo you a buck.
Well, that is the number one game on my upset of the week, on my upset alerts. I was gonna say hold off because I have two other ones that I don't have nearly as much content on. That's Texas Tech versus North Texas. Texas Tech is they let Abilene Christian score 51 points on them. They didn't have a respectable game last week when Wazoo mollywopped them. North Texas is 2-0. They're not in the Big 12, but Texas Tech is disappointed. Moving on to the Sooners. They're playing Tulane. OU's not looked good. They've not lived up to the billing. They've really underwhelmed. Tulane is Tulane. They looked great last week. They should have beat one of the favorites to make the college football playoff last week in K-State. You know, if they can ride that momentum into uh, Oklahoma, you never know what can happen. I would be on alert for that game. But moving on to the subject at hand with LSU at South Carolina. You know that saying, an immovable object versus an unstoppable force?
Yeah.
This game is the exact opposite. You have a very movable object versus a very much stoppable force. South Carolina's offense is not moving the ball. Completion percentage at like sub 50%. Completion yards is 4 to 5 a pass. Beamer ball is not scoring points. Meanwhile, LSU's defense is still not what they're supposed to be, or, not living up to that LSU name. I don't think they're very good. Um, I think LSU has the better athletes overall.
Yeah.
Nussmeier is
He's
a
good.
damn good
He's
quarterback.
very good.
He deserves better. I think LSU is soft.
I think LSU's
We
given up.
talk,
I think they've
we
given up on
said
their
it last
coach.
week. We said it last week. They're just not built the same.
Nope.
They're not again. It happens again. Yeah, they're not big on that guy anymore.
No.
Um,
I don't think the team's going to fight for him anymore.
I don't think you're wrong. I think one massive key to South Carolina pulling off this upset is one that comes in the name of Raheem Rocket Sanders. If you're familiar with the kid, played at Arkansas 2 years ago and rushed for 1,400 yards with 10 touchdowns. He averaged something stupid like 6 point something yards a carry. He should, he had a quiet 2023. He came over to this team who has a ton of momentum. Nobody expected them to do what they did last week. If they can ride that momentum, he showed a few flashes. If he can live up to his billing, LSU might be in trouble.
Agree. Agree. Well, man, it's been a fun week so far. Last thing we have to address here: toilet bowl game of the week. Talk about in trouble. Last week I picked that toilet bowl game of the week so perfectly. Duke versus Northwestern was such a poor game to watch. It was horrible to
That was
watch.
disgusting.
I have never seen that bad a quarterback play, and if you look and you see the amount of overtimes that went on in that game was horrible. I sat out in the garage. I didn't even get comfortable. I just sat out in the garage and watched it, just in shock of how terrible a football we watched. While the mighty has fallen, Malik Murphy is not playing anywhere near what he played at Texas. Just shows how good Texas is. But toilet bowl game of the week for me this week, and this comes as a doozy. Buffalo at UMass. Buffalo is a 3.5 point favorite. Buffalo is a 62.6% favorite according to the matchup protector. But man, quarterback play? You talk about quarterback play? UMass's quarterback has looked much better than anybody on the Buffaloes right now. I think that this game is going to be so bad that it's good, and don't be surprised if this game ends up going into a low score overtime. Nick, what's your toilet bowl game of the week?
Got telekinesis, my dude, because UMass at Buffalo -3.5. It's the first one I wrote down. Second one, I do have a second that I debated on. Sam Houston, 4.5 point favorite against Hawaii. We may have our first double toilet bowl of the season in this very young season. To think that Sam Houston is a favorite in the FBS level,
It's crazy.
man, the Bearcats, and they spell that stupid too, with a K.
It's disgusting. Well, man, Nick, it's been fun. We've kept this to around an hour, which is great. What are your closing thoughts?
Not a huge billing this week for college football, but college football is college football. There are still some games to watch. There's still games that are going to keep me on the couch all Saturday.
Yep.
I can't wait to get to it per usual. And who knows? We're trying to move our episodes twice a week. Try to be a little more concise and go a little more in depth with, an instant analysis on perhaps a Sunday, put it out on Monday or Sunday, whatever we get to. That way everything's fresh
Agree.
and, you know, that way we can focus the full week moving forward, literally just on what's to come. We can have a lot more deeper insight, maybe give some more numbers. If you're watching right now, I know there's just a few, but hey, we appreciate it. It's definitely fun to keep talking college football, and starting a conversation, and we're consistent on this. We're only going to do better. So, yeah, that's all I got.
And my closing thoughts are I am tired as hell. Travel from work has kicked the crap out of me. Multiple days in a row up at 5 in the morning, going super late at night. This has been the earliest I've gotten back in about a week and a half, which is crazy. So I'll tell you what, I look forward to one thing and one thing every week, and that is Saturday. And that's to keep football holy. It's been a great episode. Love you guys. Take care.